Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Muhi Khwaja with the Muslim Philanthropy Podcast, American Muslim Community Foundation. Today, I am joined by the wonderful team at CAIR Florida, and we have Hiba Rahim, Megan Amer, and Wilfredo Amer as well. Would be happy to have each of you introduce yourselves. Let's go alphabetically by first name. So I guess that will give us to Hiba.
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks for having us, Muhi. My name is Hiba Rahim. I'm the executive director here at CAIR Florida. I've been serving in this capacity for, deputy interim and then executive for about a year, but I've been with CAIR for about 15 years, non-consecutively.
Amazing. Megan?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Megan Imer. I'm the policy director here at CAIR Florida and been with CAIR for about 9 months now, but have been volunteering and working with them for a few years, actually, though, before actually officially joining on as staff.
How are you doing, Mohi? Thank you for hosting us. And my name is Wilfredo Ruiz. I am the communications director for the Council on American Islamic Relations, the Florida chapter. I've been with CARE for the past 15 years.
Wonderful. So a history of knowledge in this chat right here. And Kara's been doing obviously some very important work. But just so our listeners get a sense of who each of you are, feel free to share, where you grew up, where you went to school, what led you to CARE, and then we can talk about the programs and services later. But Hiba, please share.
Well, I was born and raised, not raised, but born in Charleston, West Virginia, which is usually a surprise for a lot of people. It's not like a Muslim community hub. But I always joke it's home of the toothbrush. And people say, really? And I say, well, otherwise it would have been called a teeth brush. But that's my joke because I'm from there, so I feel like I can make that joke.
Love it.
Grew up all around the States, and mostly I would say from 8 years old onwards, I was in Panama City, Florida, up in the Panhandle, also known as LA. That's Lower Alabama, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Panhandle. It is very much country, and so us Panama City Muslims view ourselves as like the redneck Muslims. So sometimes you'll hear the y'all and folks and how y'all doing, and God bless your heart kind of stuff coming out. But I certainly grew up into a world of activism. We were kind of thrown into that. Panama City had a small Muslim community, but it was a very tight-knit Muslim community. And I went to an Islamic school, one of the first Islamic schools in the United States. And we learned about our social responsibility to the country that we live in as Muslims, how we are responsible to serve those around us. That was very deeply embedded into our upbringing and our education. And also Islamic values and Islamic principles were very deeply embedded into our education. And so when I went to Tallahassee, to FSU, to study, that was when 9/11 happened. And that really was a curveball in my educational trajectory. I was interviewing for PhDs in psychology at that time. I was really just in my bachelor's, but I was kind of jumping up towards like grad school or PhD. But 9/11 happened, and I found myself, me and the group of friends who are with us, doing a lot of presentations and community outreach with the police departments and even the FBI and church groups, interfaith on Islam and Muslims. And it just seemed to make more sense to go into the political field. So that completely changed the trajectory of my academia. And from there, I just continued in the space of activism until today.
Really great. Thank you. Megan?
Well, I was born in New York, but lived pretty much the whole East Coast. Actually lived in West Virginia as well, in Wheeling, West Virginia. I could say that I went to a different elementary school every year of my life, and my father was not in the military. We just moved around a lot. But I actually kind of always knew what I wanted to do from a young age, always wanted to be involved in politics. It started out in local politics. I was president of the high school Democrats, president of the college Democrats. After college, I actually worked for the Republican Party on the Hill for a while because I'm mostly from the Maryland, D.C. area. But somehow in college, I took Model United Nations and I was vice president of Model United Nations. I got to travel the world with my Model United Nations team. So I got involved in foreign policy. And I actually worked for the Department of State for multiple years, based in Washington, D.C., focusing on foreign policy. And I actually worked on combating nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. And so my master's is from George Washington University on that. But you don't really see a difference on the ground when you're combating a nuclear war. So I switched to what's called the Drugs and Thugs Bureau, which is international narcotics and law enforcement affairs, and worked on kind of police reform. And it's interesting because a lot of my police reform abroad was to make the police more democratic institutions about protecting police instead of protecting the state and protecting, dictatorships, I guess you would say, and how you actually have good policing, that protect the people and protect people's rights to protest, etc. So I moved down to Florida here about 5 years ago with my husband, and I am Christian. I'm a Catholic, but my husband is Muslim. He's from Egypt, and our kids go to an Islamic school. And October 7th happened, and as a mama bear, right after October 7th, even all the Islamic schools had increased security concerns, and my kids were supposed to do the book day parade. And so they canceled parents being able to attend the book day parade. And I realized I need to do something for my community. And that's really when I got involved in, I went to multiple high schools, all the Islamic high schools, to talk to students about how to be politically engaged, how to register to vote. We need our doctors and our lawyers, but we also need our politicians in the Muslim community. So I really started organizing the Muslim community. And then I was lucky to come to CAIR Florida and to now organize here officially within the Muslim community. And I'm loving it. It's hard, it's stressful. We're being attacked every day, but it's an amazing opportunity. And I hope we can encourage more youth to get involved in politics for our community.
Beautifully said. Wilfredo?
Good. First, let me say that we're lucky to have Hiba and Megan in our team, and not them lucky to be here. Uh, I'm an attorney and chaplain by profession. I'm Puerto Rican born attorney and chaplain. I was raised and educated in Puerto Rico, went to high school, college, and law school in Puerto Rico. Upon graduating law school, I joined the Navy in the JAG Corps. So I was a Navy attorney, doing mainly defense counsel duties, representing those Marines, Coast Guard, and Navy dudes that were prosecuted in court martials. So I was like the public defender, but within the Navy environment. So I was one of the attorneys assigned to people who were normally accused of all sorts of crime, from petty crimes to attempted murders. Uh, After that, I did a what we call in the Navy a tour. So 4 years, I went back to my private practice, mainly doing criminal law. And after criminal law, I moved towards more the corporate world. I had back then my twin children, and I decided to leave behind criminal law. It was a dangerous environment and dangerous clients, and not a good place to raise a family and have that kinds of interactions, right? So I moved towards corporate, but in 2003, for those serendipities of lives and of life, I embraced Islam. I was Puerto Rico was still a community with a small Muslim community, but that had been present since the Nakba. They are mainly Palestinians, expatriates that have been there for now 3 generations, right? And there are a few Islamic centers, and I was in my spiritual search, wanting to raise my children in a ethical religious environment. And one day I was driving in the San Juan suburbs, and I pointed at a mosque, and I told the mother of my children, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to find out about Islam." We even joked about it. We said, "Could you imagine yourself with a turban and us with camels in the backyard?" But the joke ended up of with me in a couple of weeks after starting visiting Islamic centers in Puerto Rico until I finally embraced Islam in January 2003. And I took Islam very serious from the beginning, and I found that in the island it was a little limited, the education. So I went to pursue a master's degree in Islam and Christian Muslim relations in the Hartford Seminary. Now it's called the Hartford International University. And I did it rejoining the Navy, hoping that the Navy would pay for my education. They did not. But I joined the Navy again, but this time in the chaplain corps. So I was a Muslim chaplain in the United States Navy for a couple of years in the Naval Reserves, one of four only Muslim chaplains in the whole fleet. And that opened the doors. I went back upon completing that phase to Puerto Rico, but to work in the legal environment. I was an in-house attorney for a chain of hotels. After that, a door opened for me for some chaplaincy work in the a detention center, immigration detention center that the Customs and Border had in Puerto Rico. So I did that chaplaincy work. My first chaplaincy work was in a mental institution in the Connecticut Valley Hospital. That is a psychiatric hospital of the state. And then my second chaplaincy work was in the immigration detention center. 2009, I moved to Florida, and shortly after, 2010, I was offered a position in the immigration detention center in Chrome in Miami. That was under a contract with the Church World Services that held a contract with the Department of Homeland Security to provide chaplains in some institutions precisely to avoid abuses to the immigrants, abuses ranging from physical abuse or to women getting pregnant as detainees as they were there in the immigration detention center. So I worked briefly there, and a position, I started volunteering with CAIR Florida here. I was only, there was a hiatus here in CAIR Florida. We only had a single employee, and I was brought in as a volunteer, and gradually offered a part-time, and until the position ended up opening, and since then I've been uninterruptedly working with the community and loving it.
Wonderful. I appreciate each of you taking us through that journey. A lot of similarities in activism, representation, and wanting to make a difference. So kudos to each of you in terms of how you've all collectively gotten to the place where you can work together now. Mm-hmm. In terms of CAIR Florida, if you want to share some history in terms of when the chapter started, like me growing up in Michigan, I'm familiar with that story. I lived in San Francisco Bay Area for 10 years, so I know that chapter and how they operate, but every state kind of seems to independently work from one another. I know that they're all different 501c3s, but then they have the national model and things like that. So for people who aren't familiar with CAIR, Council of American Islamic Relations, give us some insight, and either one of you can take it from here.
If I may, the Florida chapter was founded in 2001, and it was a few Florida Muslim residents got together specifically after September 11. And they say, hey, we need to organize. We foresee that our community will suffer discrimination and all this wave after this September 11 big event, right? An unfortunate event. And they organized, and it was at the end of September of 2001 that they incorporated CAIR. So CAIR was a direct, in the case of Florida, a direct byproduct of a community and identifying the need of having an organization to be in the front lines of our community, foreseeing the wave of discrimination and consequences that would have in the community to this day. They had a good vision. They had a good vision.
Yeah, and for an institution to function for that long, right? It's really important in terms of community resources and volunteers and board members and staff. May
Credibility.
our yeah,
It brings
yeah.
credibility to the institution because you have been in the worst times, in the good times, in the hiatus, nothing is happening times. Now it's probably even worse than September 11th. Of the amount of work and the amount of and the organized wave of discrimination that our community is suffering from places that we didn't see it coming. We never foresaw that the office of the governor, we had posters in our office of letters that Jeb Bush, the governor, sent us saying, hey, we're proud to have an organization like CAIR Florida in our state, working with you.
Yeah.
You're an ally of Florida, to having this governor directly persecuting our community and our organization.
Well, I definitely want to get into that case for sure, because the judge ruling in favor of CAIR is a testament to your institution. But Hiba, it seemed like you wanted to share something as well.
Yeah, and just adding to what Wilfredo said, and also correcting misinformation I mentioned earlier. I said that in my intro, I'd been here for 15 years, actually, since 2015 is what I meant to say. Wilfredo's the 15-year guy, but I just wanted to correct that. But CAIR Florida is very unique in what we do. There is no other organization that does for the community and within the community what CAIR Florida does. There are so many amazing orgs that do relief work and feed the hungry and take care of orphans and shelter women, and all of that is incredibly valuable and needed. But it's interesting because our hearts, Allah has created us this way. God has created us in a way where our heartstrings move and cry at the sight of pain and destruction. And there's a quote in Arabic that says, you know how in English and media we say, if it bleeds, it leads. Well, there's a similar quote in Arabic that donations go to blood and destruction. But it is a very different type of work where you plan for the success of a society, where you plan for the protection of a community, whether they're Muslim or not. And that type of work requires visionaries to be able to see and understand the importance of the impact and support. And over the years, over the 20, almost quarter of a century now that we've been in operation, we have interacted with tens of thousands of Muslims across the state to teach them their rights, to empower the Muslim community. I've had people say to me, you know, the FBI came to my door, or I was stopped by TSA, and I remembered one of the Know Your Rights trainings that CAIR Florida did, and I knew what my rights were because of it. That's incredibly empowering. We have defended the Muslim community or other victims of discrimination outside of the Muslim community, from advocacy to the courtroom. And nobody else does that work statewide the way that CAIR Florida does, where we have branches focused on programs and outreach, like the systems. This is the department that works within the systems of society, within the hospital systems, the media, with the police departments, education, and we educate the public on Islam and Muslims in order to foster mutual respect and understanding. But then we also work with that same programs department within the Muslim community to educate and empower. And then our policy department does the advocacy and the proactive work to either promote Muslim favorable or minority favorable bills or prevent harmful obviously bills and resolutions. And then obviously our legal department, which is really in the trenches doing the defense of Muslim victims of discrimination. So together, it's a very comprehensive unit that is working with the society and for the society on so many different levels. And I think that's what makes CAIR Florida very unique. And I always want to drive that point to listeners who might wonder, well, what's the difference? Or who might give so readily to a destruction, an incident of destruction or a disaster relief, but not as readily to a political organization because maybe it doesn't pull at your heartstrings as much, but it is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, like I got to see people like Dawood Walid or Zahra Billu taking the lead in their respective communities in Michigan and California, doing fantastic work. And, even one year in Michigan, I helped organize the banquet. In California, I got to witness their 25 and 30-year anniversaries and the 20-year. So like I was there for those 10 years. And just to see the growth and impact that each of those chapters have made. And in the last few years being in Florida, actively kind of seeing the transitions that you guys have had and also the important work that you're doing. To me, and I've been deeply ingrained in the nonprofit scene, especially within the Muslim community as well. CAIR is a household name, right? That brand recognition means a lot, and it's that sweat equity. It's that visionary people who set up the national org and the local org chapters that have made it that way. So Megan, if you wanted to also share from your perspective, kind of anything around CAIR's story and what you've been able to discern the last few years that you've been there as well.
Yeah, I think Hiba really touched on some really important points because a lot of times we forget about, the long-term strategic planning, the proactive to stop some of these disasters from happening, to stop some of the foreign policy decisions that are happening.
Yeah.
So if we invest as much in being proactive and engaging with, I'm coming from the policy background, our politicians and really pushing the community on getting out the vote and voting for the right candidates to begin with, then sometimes we won't have to deal with those disasters and those foreign policy issues later on. So working really hard to get the community ready for these next round of elections. We have primaries opening in August, and then we also have all of our main elections in November. I'm actually heading to DC on Friday with another one of our employees for the annual Muslim Day at the Capitol. We have over 1,000 Muslims from across the whole country. And next year it should be a lot more. There's a lot more than 1,000 Muslims. Like we should have 1 million Muslims at the Capitol
Easily.
advocating on our behalf and meeting with our legislators and letting them know that we're here. We're just like anybody else. We just want peace. We want to raise our families. We want, to be able to afford stuff. So we're just like anybody else. So we'll be meeting with legislators next Monday and Tuesday at the Capitol. So you'll be hearing a lot more about that and hopefully some success stories and really pushing some things while we're in DC next week.
Very exciting. And yeah, that face-to-face recognition with the people who have the capacity to make decisions that alter the course of our lives is heavily effective, and kudos to the CAIR team and others who will be organizing that day. So let's jump into, if you want to break down some of these programs and services. I know you mentioned the Know Your Rights and advocacy and fighting cases, but share some of the success stories that maybe have come to light in the news, or a partnership within the mosque community that you guys are representing across the state. Or I know that there were some things at University of South Florida during the encampments, and a lot of different work that, just from my little interaction with CAIR Florida, I could speak of, but you guys are doing it on a day-to-day basis. So I'm sure that there are many more examples that you could pull from.
I believe I
I
can.
can see from Wilfredo's eyes, he has some exciting
No,
to
I
say.
want to I want to bring the all historical big events that we
Sure.
have been involved, and I believe Heba is in a better position to bring what we're doing now in the past
Sure.
year and what's coming on. We have been in situations, very dire situations. It was a September 11th, 2007, that a mosque was burned down in Fort Pierce, and that product of an arson. Uh, and the individual was eventually arrested and prosecuted and is in prison now. But to see a community, and it's a small community. For Pierce, it's not like in Broward County that you have dozens of Islamic centers, or Tampa Bay that you have also big representation of Muslims, or Central Florida. It's like an isolated mosque with just another mosque in the vicinity, and you really, the imam was in Hajj when that happened. The sons of the imams were the only ones there present, and just some board members. And imagine a community that in a Juma they congregate 40, 50 people suffering that big event, and suddenly having national and international media, just like in the movies, with literally more than a dozen news trucks with the satellite antennas transmit there. And that community was in a blink of an eye of main loss of their Islamic center by
Hmm.
the act of aggression that we have never experienced before in Florida. And CAIR Florida was there taking care of the media, was there taking care of the community, because the community also was flooded with FBI agents conducting investigation. But the FBI uh, took advantage of the access to the community to expand their investigations to beyond what happened that day and who's involved for that. So our community was in need of attorneys to represent them, even as victims. Uh, uh, and then we were there. So we were there for the media aspect. We were there for the legal aspect, protecting our community for over intrusions, right? Not necessarily related to that the that the FBI does take advantage of. If you have access, they want to go as far as they want, right?
Hmm.
Uh, but our and that was a very uh, moving moment for us. We experienced the level of extremist and hate our community can experience, uh, that went beyond the traditional people discriminated at work, or people being discriminated as when they travel, or discriminated at school, to this kind of crimes. There were other crimes that happened to the community, but this was a very uh, transcendental point, that brought us to a reality of what is the worst that could happen to our community. That because in that same mosque, a couple of hours before the arson, there was a kids event there. So
Hmm.
2 hours before that arson, there were kids in the masjid, Allahu Akbar, that nobody got hurt. Uh,
Right.
that community, the good news is was brought back to a new place, larger, with a couple of acres of land. They bought a former church and school, so they have a church, and now as a mosque. The school acting as rooms for the school. There's other apartments for living. It's a beautiful growth out of the like the Phoenix story, right? Out of ashes, literally, uh,
Yeah.
community regrew. And another case I want to bring, there was we do victims representation and victims advocacy in America. If it is not automatic, like if you're a victim of a crime, the 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 state will be behind you and expediting a prosecution of the person who committed a crime against you. You need to check the tree and be close to it and monitor and follow up. So that's a big service we provide. And there was a recent case that was not where Muslim brother resident of Florida who was working in Dubai uh, had left his family, wife and two kids behind here in Florida, and a guy, a drunk driver, uh, killed his family in a car accident in a blink of an eye. He lost his wife and kids, and imagine him Dubai, us here, and we were able to assure that individual from the beginning of him receiving the news until this case eventually developed in the prosecution and conviction of that individual and the aftermath as well. So it was a different story, a different service, but you see how we are doing, like Heba said, work that nobody else is doing, right? And so key to maintaining our community protected and assured that they can live as a community and practice as a community here freely.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that, made national headlines back in 2016 was the unfortunate incident and shooting at the Pulse nightclub.
Yes.
And, anytime a situation like that happens, many Muslims' first thought is, oh Allah, please don't let the person who did this terrible act of aggression be Muslim, right? And in that case, it was somebody who was identified as Muslim, and many nuances to that situation. But I remember that CAIR, amongst other organizations, were actively responding, dealing with the press, and helping out in those situations. So again, high profile situations, CAIR has been there to support the community, guide the community, and be there in tough times. And it's just really remarkable work that your team does.
Thank you, Muhi. And I'm going to ask Megan to share a little bit about Mohamed Ibrahim. That was a really big recent victory. And after which I can give a little bit of short little snippets of day-to-day type of conversational trace.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mohamed Ibrahim is one of our biggest success story this last year. I'm sure everybody's heard his case, but if not, he was the 16-year-old that was imprisoned in an Israeli prison for over 9 months, originally from Florida. And he's also the cousin of Saiful Moussa, who was the 20-year-old who was murdered in the West Bank, and he owns an ice cream shop here in Tampa. So his cousin, Saifullah, was a beloved member of the community here in Tampa, a small business owner. He was killed in the West Bank, and a few months prior, his cousin, Mohamed Ibrahim, had been arrested and imprisoned in an Israeli prison for 9 months, where he lost a quarter of his body weight, where he was pretty much starved. He was contacted scabies, which, is due to the terrible unsanitary conditions in the prison, and he was denied any access to ever seeing or talking to his parents or really anybody. I think he got to meet with the embassy once or twice and a lawyer once or twice. But can you imagine here in the US, your 16-year-old, you can't see him or even talk to him for 9 months? And it was, in the end off of a silly conviction. So we really mobilized pretty much an international, I'll say a national coalition. We started with a huge letter with some big name groups, all signing on to a letter, with many newspaper stories through The Guardian, even all the major news outlets finally picking up his case after we kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it here on the Florida level. So I really think the pressure helped a lot. The ambassador, Mike Huckabee, to the U.S. Embassy in Israel even said, I'm getting so annoyed with all these phone calls. We had people calling the embassy, here at 5 p.m., so their midnight time, constantly calling the embassy and saying, what are you doing about this U.S. citizen? Why is this young man being starved and not allowed any legal access, no access to his parents for over 9 months, and he's a U.S. citizen? So he was released on Thanksgiving Day. I was actually on my way on a family vacation, and my phones, I just kept hearing these beep, 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 beeps on my phones, and I'm like, what's going on? And I looked at my phone and I looked at the message, and gonna make me cry now too. Just started crying, tears of joy. We were just so thankful. Sorry, I'll take a minute to
Beautiful.
regroup.
Yeah.
But he's home. He's here in Tampa and he's working at the ice cream shop. And we go and say hi to him every once in a while. Um, but now we have to continue pressing for justice for his cousin, because his cousin, the 9-month anniversary of his cousin's killing by settlers in Israel, was on October 11th. So that's one big thing that we'll be pushing for when we're in DC next week, is the increase in settler violence, the increase of U.S. citizens that have been killed by settler violence, and the U.S. support, funding, even shipping weapons to Israel that the settlers are now using in this violence against U.S. citizens. So next week we'll be pushing for justice for his cousin. And but still, alhamdulillah, he's home, he's safe, he's transitioning, and he's doing very well. And again, working as a 16-year-old boy, but it's terrible that he had to go through that, and he should not have had to go through that.
Yeah, I need that location of the ice cream shop ASAP. So
Amazing ice cream too. It's like Amish flavor. It's so good.
Yeah,
I'll
and
send
for the listeners, it's ice creamin' on Bruce B. Downs in Tampa.
I'm going there right after this.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a recent major victory. And just imagine how difficult it is to mobilized to get someone out of an Israeli military prison, more than one. He was transferred across a couple of different military prisons. But it's the work. CAIR Florida didn't do all that work. We organized and mobilized, and we recognized when something is way bigger than us, it's going to require a massive effort. And so it was that mobilization of massive effort and using community resources to grow that exponentially, right? And being on the ground in Florida, mobilizing Florida groups and working with others to mobilize nationally and, as Megan said, internationally. So there's a lot of strategy that goes into the work, a lot of deliberate, intentional effort that goes in. And I know you want to talk about the court case, so I'll just say very quickly that when we have incidents of school bullying, and we get calls about school bullying, Muslims in public schools
Yeah.
particularly, there's a story. I'll give one story. We respond and we react to that. So one story was from Leon County, where there was an incident of a boy who was getting bullied, and also a teacher who said something inappropriate. And because we have hired professionals, we had someone drive over to Tallahassee and insist on meeting with the superintendent who hadn't previously given us a meeting time, until finally they were able to sit together, talk face to face. And face to face meetings are very different than just emails or
Of
on the
course.
phone. And that led to the ability for CAIR Florida to train all the assistant principals of Leon County on cultural sensitivity training and Islam 101. What are Muslims' rights? What do you do? What do you not do? What are Muslim students experiencing, and how to be sensitive to that? So we take these unfortunate incidents and we convert them into opportunities to train and educate. We've done the same thing with police departments. In Hillsborough County, we've trained over 5,000 officers across the state of Florida. All of our different chapters, all of our different offices, rather, have worked with their local police departments to train them and teach them on Islam and Muslims. And interacting with Islam and Muslims and different cultural nuances that they might experience. And even just being that spokesperson for the Muslim community. When one of the sheriffs I met with said, "What are you doing to combat extremism in the Muslim community?" I said, "Sir, what are you doing to combat white nationalist extremists? Because the KKK is flyering on people's yards just 2 weeks ago." And this was up in the Panhandle. So having that representation on behalf of the Muslim community is really invaluable. And that's part of what CAIR Florida does.
Beautiful.
Muhi, did you have your hand up?
I was
Okay.
trying to make another reaction. Yeah.
I thought that was my cue to wrap up.
No, not at all. Not at all. Please continue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's it. And I think if you'd like to just go into, despite all the work that we do, that is really intended to bring the community together, Muslims, non-Muslims, the community at whole. Like if we understand each other better, we can live peacefully, we can respect and love each other the way Christian teachings are, the way Jewish teachings are, the Muslim teaching, Buddhist, and everybody. Like these are our spiritual teachings. These are
Yeah.
even our non-religious teaching, like good ethical people
Right.
want this, right? So we are advocating for this for this type of society and working actively toward it. But there are forces that are very have for years been spreading disinformation, and those entities, the Islamophobia network, which is just an incredibly well-funded network and spreads so maliciously into so many different areas of society, from media to politicians, and have so much impact, have really been on this concerted effort and campaign to attack CAIR as a Muslim civil rights organization, but other Islamic entities as well.
Yeah.
And we've said, and this was told to me just this last Ramadan, and I felt really empowered by it. One of the imams said, in a field of trees, only the tree that bears fruits gets rocks thrown at it. And
Mm.
I was really just feeling overwhelmed by just the constant attacks. And it was just a reminder that it's the work that we're doing, and it's the civil rights defense and the advocacy and the promotion of goodness and the community cohesiveness that we're promoting that is the antithesis of the agenda, the Islamophobic agenda. And that's why CAIR is being attacked. It's
Yeah.
because of our highlighting of the Israel First agenda and Governor Ron DeSantis and the county commissions funneling and funding of Florida taxpayers' money to Israel, while our Floridians are suffering from
Yeah.
lack of money and resources. They're hungry. Education is suffering. People can't they can't get insurance, they can't get proper health care. Veterans are suffering, and yet we're funneling millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to another country that offers its citizens free public, education, healthcare, and everything like that. And people don't know that. And we're
Doesn't make sense.
highlighting, doesn't make sense. We're highlighting these things. And so, of course, yes, we are going to come under attack, but we will continue the work that we do in raising awareness because people have the right to know.
Following up on that, I went to a hearing in Miami-Dade County. That's one of the counties that send the most money, no more than Palm Beach, that they send in the order of hundreds of millions of dollars in Israeli bonds. But they said they were, I believe, issuing a $85 million approving it. And it surprised me that I was the only Muslim speaker that day against that. There were Jewish speakers and Christian speakers opposing that, and the only Muslim organization, unfortunately, that was speaking against it and denouncing that those monies were going to be used to murder kids in the present Gaza war, and you see that we do have allies that are not necessarily even they're natural allies, people who don't like to be part of injustices, or
Right.
don't like their monies or public monies to be used for war, or
Hmm.
or, or or to perpetuate injustices, and they will go and denounce it. But that tell us that our communities has become numerous. In we have over 500,000 Muslims in Florida, but still growing, institutionally growing, right? We hope that there were other organizations like CAIR Florida operating in this large state, or other organizations that were involved more in policy, uh, uh, engaging with politicians and elected officials at all levels, right? And what we have seen is, and we have experienced, is a level of involvement of the enemies of Islam and the Muslim community, that they decided to take the dust off of the script that they use after September 11, and they're implementing the same script, demonizing Islam, demonizing the Muslim community, dehumanizing the Muslim community, so that we become easy targets of a political football. And they take us as a political football for campaigning, for, hey, this is the community I can insult, and I can keep stay in my public office. I can insult them. I can insult their religion. I can insult their beliefs. I can demonize their belief. I can just present lies as facts, regarding their beliefs and their ethical standard, when they ethical stands, uh, and we need to move our community so that every one of us becomes an ambassador of Islam, that in your workplace you are an ambassador of Islam. Our kids are ambassadors in their schoolrooms and the classrooms, uh, where we embody, inshallah, the tenets of Islam and the beauty of Islam, and the peace that Islam is supposed to be assuring to everyone that comes around us to work or to come and do business with us, or perhaps to get a service from us. We have been historically in that position, and that's something that we can perhaps achieve, to be that example that people want to say, hey, if I do business, I want to do business with the Muslims. They're the honest ones. They're the ones that are going to honor their word. Are going to honor their guarantees. Are going to honor their business, right? And the same in all aspects, right? Where Hiba was living at in Panama City in the Panhandle, perhaps the thing that speaks the most and the better of our community is the fact that most of the Muslim families that live there are doctors, uh, providing services. So all the pediatricians, the OBGYNs, they are all Muslims servicing a community of non-Muslims. So
Mhm.
what happened? You see your kid being serviced by a Muslim, yourself, your wife, and that speaks by themselves, because when they speak wrong about it, I remember a neighbor of that mosque that was burned down, and it was a lady, a cancer patient, not Muslim, and she stood for us. And she was in the news saying, hey, these people are good. The imam of that mosque never charged me when I go to get services.
Uh,
And that's what it's about. Someone stood for us, not because she was trained to do it, because spontaneously she thought that is not just that they're speaking ill of Muslims and look what is happening to them, when all I get from them is good, and someone who have even take care of my health without charging me. That was very moving, and still is, right? And I believe we can aspire to that, to have allies that strengthen our work, because we cannot do it all. Even if we have double of the money we have and double of the staff we have, it's too much work. It's too much work, and it is the level, like I said, the level of hate we're experiencing, it requires more than a CAIR in the front lines. It requires for a whole community to stand and say, we're not that. This is what I'm doing for the community. I mean, it's good for my community. Or this is the example that my kid sends is at school. He's the best student in his classroom. Uh, uh, and there's space for growth beyond organizational growth, that we have space, and the better equipped we have, the more tools, the better. But this is an effort that goes beyond what CARE does, and all organizations do, even the relief organizations, giving most of the relief work we do in Florida, from IGNA relief, Islamic relief, is done to non-Muslims. So these are people receiving those services, those food boxes, so getting their house clean and painted and
Right.
after a hurricane. So that is what really makes a difference because it's a difference in the ground. So when politicians come with these stories, you'll see this like the lady spontaneously coming out, hey, what are you talking about? These are not this is not Islam, this is not Muslims. I know Muslims. My neighbor is a Muslim, or my doctor is a Muslim, the teacher of my kid is a Muslim, and it doesn't reflect what you're trying to convey. So I believe those are the best where I
Beautiful.
foresee our growth as a community in Florida really moving.
Thank you so much. I think that's a great place to put a pin in it. And I know that so much more could be said. But I really appreciate each of you and taking time to share more with our community about the wonderful work that CAIR Florida is doing. So, on behalf of AMCF, Wilfredo, Megan, Hiba, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for
Thank
having us.
you.
Absolutely. Wa alaikum assalam. Take care.
Assalamu alaikum.